Welcome into the Alabama Football Report. I am Tom Downey. With all the bad weather around the nation, including impacting us here at Chat Sports. Different setup, no graphics today, just the at-home style video, because getting into the office simply wasn't going to be in the cards for me today. We're going to break down a lot on the Alabama offensive line, the coaching staff changes here with Chris Kapilovic out as the O-line coach, a potential, I think, sneaky good hire coming aboard as the offensive line coach. Not done, by the way, as of filming. And just kind of going through the offensive line as a unit with where things currently sit. So we will have more coverage for you on the Alabama Football Report. Recruiting stuff set to get going here in the not-too-distant future. We'll do some roster breakdowns as well because it's been a lot of change in the transfer portal overall this year. So if you want more free videos, help us out by liking today's video, please and thank you, on social media. All right, so big change over the weekend. Offensive line coach Chris Kapilovic fired, which I know many of you wanted, and I get it. The offensive line clearly wasn't good enough this past year for Alabama. I don't think anyone would disagree, and that's clearly a factor in why the firing happened here. I am, though, at least somewhat surprised by the timing. I think a clear part of the timing was they were letting the portal close, and they were getting everything in and then making a change on the offensive line, which, makes some sense. Maybe isn't perfect necessarily either. I know that On3 has reported that Cap was surprised by the news, that he thought he was going to be back, and found out after, I think, Friday afternoon, not before, like people thought. So timing is certainly interesting. There have been so much speculation and rumors and chatter and buzz about it, especially after the loss to Indiana. That Indiana loss doesn't look as bad, with the Hoosiers being a wagon and winning the national championship, obviously. I think probably makes sense to do it. I'm a little surprised it didn't happen earlier from a timing perspective of, like, if you're going to do it, we're just going to do it when the season ended. But maybe you wanted to keep some guys from hitting the portal, and you wanted to, frankly, he was a good recruiter. Probably helped you out in that area. I think there's a clear, philosophical change with what this team is trying to do, with what they had versus what they're getting, and just overall schematics. Not like a drastic change with Deboer and Grubb, but I think just does it mesh with what he was good at, what they had on the offensive line. But I don't think it was one thing on the O-line. I think the running backs did it, the holes right properly. Tight ends didn't always do a great job of blocking. But clearly the fit and what they wanted to do and what they were able to do didn't mesh. So I think moving on from Cap made a lot of sense. It was probably time to do that. I think it was a logical move. I'm just a little bit surprised at the timing of it all. I thought it might happen earlier if it was going to happen. So first question for you guys in the comment section of today's show: was Alabama right to fire their offensive line coach? Y for yes, N for no. Let me know in the comment section of today's show at the pinned comment. Let's move now to the likely replacement. That is Adrian Klemm. And this is reported by On3. National and the local Bama reporters have all said he's the top target for Alabama. As of filming, Monday around 3:15 p.m. Eastern time at this moment, nothing official on Adrian Klemm as the Bama next offensive line coach. Certainly sounds like that's going to be the case. Maybe there's ironing out details at this time, but he is the top target there. Former NFL player, by the way. Second-round pick out of Hawaii back in 2000. Played several years for the Patriots, Packers, and then the Raiders. Kind of a quick rise in his coaching career right after his last year with the Raiders back in 2007. Goes to SMU as a grad assistant. 1 year later, promoted to the offensive line coach. Also got recruiting coordinator title added to him in 2011. He then jumps over promotion to UCLA, where he has the offensive line coach and run game coordinator responsibilities. After 2 years at UCLA, gets promoted to assistant head coach with his title there. Then makes the jump over to the NFL the next year. Takes a job as the Steelers' assistant offensive line coach. Then promoted to full-time offensive line coach. Then jumps back to the collegiate ranks where he gets associate head coach, run game coordinator, and offensive line coach for Oregon. So again, plenty of movement and job jumping there. Takes a job for a year as the Patriots offensive line coach is probably where most people know him because it wasn't good that year in New England. I have some more thoughts on that I want to get to here in a second. But and then this past year was a USC analyst. It does sound like he was dealing with some health issues after 2023, and that was a factor in why he took 2024 off, and then was essentially kind of getting his feet wet back into the business, so to speak. I'm intrigued by this one. I think there's a lot of upside ability here, and I think many of us would take the approach of, well, can it be much worse for Alabama? So if and when he gets hired, grade the hire of Adrian Klemm for me. A, B, C, D, or F. Let me know in the comments section of today's show. I want to mention some just other stuff here on Klemm. There had been some message board buzz nonetheless, that he might be brought in as the number 2 underneath Coach Cap. And that, I don't love that idea. Like, I always get a little bit anxious when, like, you're hiring someone who, like, could very well be the straight up replacement next year. Like, that gets a little bit too frictiony of, like, this might not be what we actually want. In the end, it kind of concerns me a wee bit there. Of note, you're not going to get Scott Huff back. That as cool as that would be, feel like he's going to stick around in Seattle for the long term. He's also playing this in the Super Bowl, so he's not available. You're going to win a championship potentially as an offensive line coach. Like, I know the Ryan Grubb era didn't go very well for 1 year in Seattle, but I think the Scott Huff one is doing much better on that front there. Timing-wise, again, I wouldn't be shocked if something happened soon, even today potentially, just because I know Bama's got their junior day coming up this weekend, or I guess to be senior day is whatever we want to call it timing-wise there. I think that it would make a lot of sense to have your offensive line coach in place, if only for some evaluation and recruiting standpoint. So we'll see about the timing. More on that to come, and just the offensive line in general. But first, the big game is almost here, and there's no better way to cash in during America's biggest sporting event than Prize Picks, where it always feels good to be right. And since the big game is right around the corner, that also means it's your last chance to get into the football action before next season. So close the year out right with Prize Picks by getting $50 instantly in lineups when you play your first $5. Check out the new social feeds feature. You can share Prize Picks with your friends, copy lineups with a single click. You can just copy them straight up or use inspiration for your own picks. Follow Prize Pick partners like us, Tail, or Fate our picks with just one click. Join millions of users and sign up for America's #1 sports picks app. As a reminder, it's not just football. You got plenty of basketball options as well with, no real games this week. Download the Prize Picks app today. Use code CLNS to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code CLNS to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks. It's good to be right. Link will be in the comments section and the description of today's show. PrizePicks.com/CLNS and use code CLNS. Pen is here, by the way. That's what's poking up on the screen. All right, offensive line outlook, and I'll make note here, just by the way, we will do some more in-depth stuff on just the depth chart, really, roster breakdown later this week, so make sure you're locked in for that. I would think that left tackle ends up being a battle between Javen James and Jackson Lloyd. That's the redshirt freshman and the transfer of Mississippi State. James has played both sides, but I think you can then move Haywood to a spot where he might play earlier there. Ty Haywood, by the way. So I think those two would likely be the battle. Maybe Lloyd isn't ready yet necessarily, but I think that he would probably be your favorite. And then, maybe James competes at a different spot as well. But I think depth, your possible options, not going to be set in stone for a while here. Left guard, a lot of competition here. Maybe Will Sanders is your early odds-on favorite, not by a lot. He's definitely added some master. Two different styles. I think like him and Nick Brooks stand. I think Ethan Fields ends up being a backup for this team, but Sanders and Nick Brooks, like Sanders is what? Like 6'3", 310? Brooks is like 6'7", 340. He's also got tackle potential. I wouldn't be shocked if he ends up being like the 6th or 7th offensive line as the first guy in off the bench. Kind of feel like Rayson Delgatti or Caden Strayhorn compete for the center job. Both of them transfers. Delgatti's size kind of fits pretty similar to Parker Brailsford. But, competition jump for Delgatti, more experience. Strayhorn, I thought was fine. starting center in the bowl game against Texas. I think he's also an option at right guard. I think Ty Haywood makes a lot of sense there now too. Like instead of having to compete for a tackle spot potentially, you can let him compete at the guard spot. Maybe a Casey Poe or a Mal Waldrop end up competing as well. I think in an ideal world, the former 5-star Ty Haywood ends up winning that spot, but we'll see. And then, right tackle, and maybe Javen James competes here as well if he doesn't earn the left tackle job. Maybe James is the swing tackle. Michael Carter's going to start somewhere on this offensive line. I think it's a matter of, is he at right tackle? Do they kick him inside to guard potentially? There's a lot of options for Carroll, but that's what the spring and fall is for. They're going to spend a lot of time, a lot of focus, I think, spent on the show looking in at what the offensive line will end up looking like. So hit that sub button if you haven't already for more free Alabama football YouTube videos. See you guys again soon.